Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am your Ice Dragon, Rayron. Got another manga book here, ready to review for you guys. So this is Sailor Moon Manga Volume 4. So this particular volume is interesting, to say the least, because it kind of does something that I don't like what modern day entertainment is doing, and that is obviously the biggest elephant in the room, that is time travel. As we saw from Volume 3, Rini was able to go back from the future into the past, into the Sailor Moon that we were reading through in the first 3 volumes of this manga. So as we go through this particular manga, let's go ahead and again, I want to mention that I will be talking a little bit of spoilers in here, so if you don't want to get spoiled and want to read it on your own, then go ahead and review this video at another time. So let's go ahead and look at the particular chapters for this particular book here. So we got our introduction to Sailor Pluto, which I can't wait to talk about her. And then we got some more art here. Alright, so as far as our chapters are concerned, again, they call it acts in the manga. But we've got here Secret Sailor Jupiter, Invasion Sailor Venus, Time Warp Sailor Pluto, Crystal Tokyo, King Indie Moon, and then Complications Nemesis. So that definitely gives you kind of a overview of what they're going to be talking about in this particular volume. So this particular volume, we are met with the other two Spectre sisters, Pets and Calaveras. And our scouts were able to defeat these two particular enemies. Pets is a little bit interesting though, because her earring basically falls off in the battle, and then they were able to capture it. Now Rini has a reaction to this because that part of the earring is part of the magnificent dark crystal, is what they call it in the particular manga here. And that particular energy is the best way I can describe it is the opposite of the silver crystal as far as, you know, good and bad energies essentially. And it comes from a planet called Nemesis, which we'll talk about that here soon. So with that, they were able to defeat the Spectre sisters, and then they came to the realization that it came from a different time. In other words, the future. I'm trying to remember here. Tuxedo Mask and his basically, or Darien, there we go. Darien was able to talk to his former generals through, the rocks that they represent. And basically, it was an alien type of material. It was, part of the future. And then Rini basically realizes that, no, I'll try to remember the order sequence here, so bear with me, I'm trying to do this based off of memory. So what happened was, during one of the last fights of the Spectre sisters, Rini actually stole the crystal from Serena and almost got Serena into a lot of trouble because of the fight that they had to do. And then basically, she was able to get the crystal back and was able to transform. And then Rini realizes that Serena is the Sailor Moon that she's looking for. So as a result, after the fight of the Spectre sisters, they realized that Rini came from the future, obviously, and she had a key that allowed her to travel to the past. So as a result of that, they were able to then realize that, hey, the skates, at this point we had Mercury, Mars, and Mercury, Mars, Jupiter. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is Jupiter gets captured in the fight for the last Spectre sister, Calaveras. So now we had Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, and I'm forgetting one. No, I think it's those three. Anyways, they realized that they may be stuck in the future. So then they decide to go ahead and go back to the future through the gates, where we are met with Sailor Pluto. So there's a few things to talk about when it comes to time travel. So I thought this volume didn't talk about, or I thought the lore didn't really talk about too much about time travel. Time travel is a really messy thing. You really have to establish the rules and the lore when it comes to time traveling. And that's one thing that I criticize this a lot. the idea is there, but the problem is they don't stick to their rules. So the manga tries to talk about time in here, and I kind of want to point that out a little bit. So this is when they go to the future here. So, small lady, where have you been all this time? I thought the legendary silver crystal owned by Sailor Moon of all the stories were powerful more than legendary silver crystals, so I went into the past. The legendary silver crystal is unchanging. No matter what the age, it is the same. And you, as you are now, cannot use it. I thought you understood. You broke your promise and stole the time key. Then you went into the past without permission. She's mad at me. Thank goodness you're safe, small lady. Don't you ever worry like that again. So now we're starting to introduce not only time, but we're starting to introduce the concept of how powerful is this MacGuffin, the legendary silver crystal, within the lore. So yeah, it's really interesting about the legendary silver crystal, and it's getting to the point that it is very powerful. And I would have to concede a little bit that the crystal is definitely kind of a McMuffin, or a MacGuffin, essentially, that it's becoming a very powerful entity that the plot is kind of depending on. And then there's also kind of the catalyst of Rini. Now, definitely in the manga version, I originally thought she was given permission to go back to the past from Neo Queen Serenity. Maybe I'm getting that confused with the 90s. I have to rewatch it to see if that's the case or not. But she is definitely been the catalyst of the plot, and the way she is portrayed, definitely in the manga, is that she's kind of a immature little lady, essentially, that she's causing all these problems. And by the end of this volume, it's definitely clear that she has basically caused a lot of the problems in this story, essentially. So, yeah, she's definitely the quote unquote brat of the lore at this point. But yeah, it is what it is. So, anyways, another point I want to point out here. Let's go ahead about the time. So this is quite interesting. So before I get to this point here, so they were able to go to the future. They were able to meet Diana, which is the daughter of Luna and Artemis, and then they come to the realization that they met the king of the future, which is basically Tuxedo Mask in the future. And then they finally realize that Rini is the daughter of Sailor Moon and Tuxedo Mask. But they're able to talk about the story of what happened, that they had this planet called Nemesis enter the solar system, and they were able to, Neo Queen Serenity was able to banish the dark villains, or not necessarily prisoners, but basically very evil people. They were able to banish the Nemesis. And as you would suspect, Nemesis was able to rise up and rebel and calling themselves, in the manga, the Black Moon. In the anime, it's called Dark Moon. But same thing, essentially. So they were able to tour basically Crystal Tokyo a little bit in the palace. And then Serena was able to, or our current timeline, Sailor Moon. Again, it gets so finicky when it comes to timeline. It's very, when you're writing time, you really need to understand your rules. So the manga tries to address this a little bit, and I'll read a little excerpt here for that. So we got our future Tuxedo Mask here. Shoot, you have to get back to the past now. It's against the laws of nature for more than one of the same person to exist in the same time and space. And so, if it happens in such close proximity, it puts strain on the space and time. So what happened was, Serena was basically starting to freeze up a little bit. She was feeling kind of faint from the previous one. So the manga and the lore try to address, the issues of space and time a little bit. But one criticism that I have about this is that they don't follow it, because we'll go into that a little bit later. So that is one point that they try to address, the space and time. And then as a result, they decided that they needed to go back to present-day Earth and come up with a plan to figure out, what they're going to do next. So with that, they've also go into something I want to mention. It's not kind of the space and time thing, but I want to talk about Sailor Pluto. The reason why I liked her as one of the outer planets is that her initial backstory is that she is the unsung hero. She is that ninja that I don't want to say appreciate, but no one really knows about her. That she is basically the protector of time and space. So, kind of some excerpts here about Sailor Pluto. So, the blood of Cronus, the god, the master of time, flows within her veins. She is the beautiful, solitary guardian of the door to Hades that exists in the threshold between times. Time is finally sorry, I can't pronounce that word. Sacrosanct territory. And since ancient times, Sailor Pluto has been guardian that forbidden territory, standing at the door, space, time, all done. So, with that little excerpt, I want you guys to remember that backstory of Sailor Pluto. Because in the upcoming volumes, unfortunately, this kind of gets retconned. Which is sad because I like her backstory a lot. That she is this she's one scout essentially that protects that door of time and space. So, great backstory with Sailor Pluto. So with that, they continue on back to the planet of the present day Earth. And so they were trying to figure out what to do, and then our wonderful little catalyst, that's what I'm going to call her, Rini, decided to, you know what, I want to see if I can solve everything on my own. So then she goes back again into the future, and everyone's trying to find her, and then they realized, oh, we need to go. She probably went back to the future. One thing here, the king did grant Pluto to give the current Sailor Moon a key, so that way they can transfer in and out from the future, or from the past to the future at will, which again kind of violates the rules of space and time, especially when they kind of showed that in the manga itself. So again, finicky when you talk about time and space. So anyways, they go back to the future, and then they are kind of attacked by our main villains here. The main one that kind of stood out was, in this case, Esmeralda. She's one of the villains of the Black Moon, along with Crimson, Diamond, and Rubius. So they were kind of re-attacked again when they go to the future. But this time they were actually successful in capturing Sailor Moon. And she is taken to Nemesis, home of the Maleficent, Black Crystal, Diamond, Wiseman, and all that. So they go into more backstory of Wiseman and the four main villains of the clan, essentially, of the Black Moon. I'm not going to go too much into detail with them. But this volume, unfortunately, has one of the worst scenes in Sailor Moon, in my opinion. It freaked me out when I was actually watching it on the 90s version. I'm surprised that the 90s version actually allowed it to go through. But unfortunately, Diamond captures Sailor Moon, and she was able to essentially redress her. And unfortunately, there is a scene where Diamond pretty much forces a kiss onto Sailor Moon. And that scene kind of... I had a lot of questions when I was a kid when that scene happened, and I hated it back then, and I hate it now. But it's just one of those things that it's the reality of real world, But again, I don't want that in my escapism. That is personal preference, that is biased, and that is 100% subjective. But I don't want it in my escapism. But there is a scene there with that, and then she starts to question everything, like a person that essentially was raped should, having all these questions. But then, she also has this conflicts because of Rini. And to go back a little bit here, when they talk to the king of the future of Tuxedo Mask, he basically explains that the MacGuffin, essentially, in this case, with the Imperial Silver Crystal, it was so powerful that it gave basically quote-unquote immortality in their version, which is basically they do age, but they don't age physically. So at this point, when the Black Moon attacked Future Crystal Tokyo, the crystal basically... I'm trying to describe this. So they attacked the crystal. The palace and Crystal Tokyo was completely destroyed, and the crystal was able to grow and encapsulate our future Neo Queen Serenity and encapsulated her. Now, by this point, she was 1,000 years old, so she was really, really old. And then, um, Rini was about 900-ish years old, but she still looked like a child. So there is a lot of issues when it comes to how powerful this silver crystal is, and that's one of the biggest complaints about this is that I think the silver crystal is too powerful, considering that it was able to not only protect the entire city and physically not age the human body, but it was also able to protect the entire earth. Like, that is very, very powerful. I don't think we've seen anything that powerful even in today's fantasy stories. But that's definitely one of my biggest complaints about, is that I think it's a little too powerful. And then now you start muddying the water with, okay, now you have this 9-year-old girl, so now we got morality in that as well. So it's like, no, no, no. I'm not even going to touch that, because then it implicates a lot of morality issues. And it's just something I wish they'd never touched and never talked about. But yeah, that's what happens when you try to introduce so many things. So, um, anyways, so going back to Sailor Moon is captured, and then she's also wondering that, oh, is Rini dating, Darien? She has all these conflicting ideas, and it's all unnecessary. It's all unnecessary. But then luckily she remembers her mom, or Serena remembers what her mom said when she visited the Moon Kingdom back in, I think, Volume 2, and that the silk crystal depends on the strength of your heart. And so she starts to grow upon that, and then we start to see the other scouts start to awaken, try to transform, but they can't because they're on Nemesis, and they're right now the strength of Nemesis doesn't allow them to transform. And so by the end of it, we kind of get like all of the events that Rini did to kind of continue the catalyst movement of the plot. And so it is explained that she took the crystal from Neo Queen Serenity, and at that point that left the Earth kind of vulnerable at that point, and that's when just by coincidence the Black Moon was able to come in and destroy the kingdom, and then that's when she stole the key from Pluto and went back in time. So, is she a brat? Yes, in this perspective. So, we always talk about the hero's journey. So here we have, a brat of a kid that doesn't listen to her parents, doesn't, affected with time and space, which is, yeah, really, really bad. And then by the end of it, when she's traveling back and forth, she gets a nice little visitor from our main antagonist of this volume. And that's what this volume particularly ends. So when it comes to Volume 4, definitely not the greatest, because it really went into the aspect of time and space, and also just how powerful the silver crystal is when it comes to protecting the age of the human body. Now, I think this volume was trying to do too much, and because it was doing too much, it needed to explain a whole bunch. But as you saw from the excerpts, those were the only times they talked about how space and time worked. And I wish they went into a little bit more detail with that. And of course, this volume, I'm kind of biased because it had the worst scene in Sailor Moon, in my opinion, and that was unfortunately the rape kiss from Diamond to Serena. But other than that, this volume, it's okay. It continues the lore, but again, definitely not my favorite because of the whole space and time aspect. But I do like the concept of Crystal Tokyo. I wish we could have seen more of that in later mangas, but they don't explore Crystal Tokyo at all after this particular storyline. So, but yeah, it needed to explain a whole bunch, and it didn't, and it kind of violates its own rules. And we kind of got the backstory of Sailor Pluto, which is nice. But again, I'll show you guys in later volumes how they kind of retconned it, unfortunately. But yeah, definitely not one of my favorite ones. But we did get Crystal Tokyo out of it, and the concept of the 30th century, and I wish we could have seen more of that. But yeah, that's really all I can say about this particular review. Not the greatest, but with that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next volume.